There are moments in football that seem ordinary at first, the kind of matches no one expects to remember. Yet sometimes history is quietly unfolding in the background, and in one such game, with only minutes left and a penalty awarded that could push the team toward relegation, a teenage ball boy standing behind the advertising boards shouted to the goalkeeper to dive to his right. And when the keeper followed that advice and saved the shot, people inside the club began joking that the real man of the match had not even been on the pitch, giving the boy a playful nickname because they believed he deserved partial credit for preventing goals. And that boy was Arda Güler, who at the time was unknown to most fans, but would soon be described as Turkey's brightest football hope. A generational talent rising at unprecedented speed. Remarkable not only because of his technical brilliance, but because of his age. Considering that before turning 20, he had already performed on major international stages while players like Cristiano Ronaldo had been competing for global awards when Arda was only a newborn. Yet his emergence was far from accidental, since his development had been carefully guided from childhood, with a father deeply committed to shaping his future, surrounding him with Fenerbahçe colors, placing him in structured training by the age of 4, and even intentionally encouraging him to use his left foot despite not being naturally left-footed, turning repetition into instinct and instinct into identity, so that by the time he joined Gençlerbirliği's academy at 9, he was already speaking confidently about a clear career path that would take him first to Fenerbahçe and later to Europe at 18. A confidence that seemed bold for a child but convincing to those who saw him play, because coaches struggled to explain how someone so young could control the ball with such composure, describing it as if possession were simply an extension of his body. And as his performances improved, his reputation quietly grew until a Fenerbahçe scout attending a youth match for another prospect found himself unable to look away from Arda's movement and decision-making, eventually visiting his family home where he saw walls covered in club posters and heard the boy speak about becoming the next great playmaker. Yet when the scout returned to present his findings, he was met with skepticism and disbelief, forcing him to compile footage and push persistently until the club finally agreed to sign him for a relatively modest fee that included a future sell-on clause, a decision that would later appear astonishingly inexpensive. And once he arrived at Fenerbahçe, his progression accelerated rapidly despite pandemic delays preventing an even earlier debut, as he moved quickly into the under-19 squad. Despite being years younger than many teammates, delivering goals and assists consistently, and producing an explosive playoff run with multiple decisive contributions that made it impossible to ignore him, leading to first-team training invitations and public praise from experienced managers who admitted that players of his technical level were rare. And soon enough, he made his senior debut, contributing immediately and even stepping onto the pitch in place of Mesut Ozil, one of his idols at just 16 years old, a symbolic passing of the torch at the club he had dreamed about since childhood, reinforcing the sense that his journey was not built on luck, but on preparation, belief, and relentless guidance. So that even the famous penalty save incident no longer felt random, but instead like an early glimpse of a player who was always meant to influence matches, whether from the sidelines or at the center of the action. Over the following months, Arda Güler erased any remaining doubt that his earlier performances had been a temporary surge of form, returning to the under-19 side and producing numbers that seemed almost unrealistic, registering 9 goal contributions in just 6 matches while simultaneously earning a call-up to Turkey's under-17 national team, where he added 3 more contributions in 3 appearances and played with the authority of someone far beyond his years. Even a brief injury setback that sidelined him for nearly a month could not slow the momentum that was building around his name. Because by the time he returned, change had arrived at Fenerbahçe, and with a new managerial direction seeking fresh energy and imagination, Güler was handed an opportunity on the European stage in the Conference League against Slavia Prague, responding instantly with 2 assists across the 2 legs, including one away from home that demonstrated vision and composure rarely seen in a player still in his mid-teens. And in between those continental nights, he quietly slipped in his first league start, walking away with the Man of the Match award after dominating the vote with an overwhelming majority. From that moment, the atmosphere inside the stadium transformed, supporters chanting his name week after week, urging the manager to trust the teenager as the season drifted away and the title race seemed lost. And in a tense draw against Alanyaspor, with 10 matches remaining and frustration mounting, the decision was finally made to introduce him once again in place of Mesut Ozil, a substitution that felt symbolic as much as tactical. And within minutes, Güler justified the faith by scoring to become the youngest player in Fenerbahçe's history to find the net before adding 2 assists that turned a fading contest into a resounding victory. a performance that made it impossible to return him quietly to the bench. From then on, he featured consistently, and although his minutes were often limited, his influence was undeniable, helping drive a 7-match winning run, contributing goals and assists while elevating the tempo and creativity of the side whenever he stepped onto the pitch, ultimately pushing the club back into second place and restoring belief among the supporters, and by season's end, his statistical output measured in goals per minute placed him in territory so extreme that comparisons naturally emerged, with fans dubbing him the Turkish Messi, not merely out of excitement, but because of the elegance of his left foot, his balance in tight spaces, and the calm intelligence with which he dictated play. As transfer interest from European giants intensified and his market value surged, those close to him insisted that his mentality remained his greatest strength, shaped by a disciplined upbringing that valued humility as much as ambition, and that resilience would soon be tested again when another managerial shift brought uncertainty. Yet instead of fading, Güler's importance deepened, earning him a long-term contract extension and the iconic number 10 shirt, a symbol heavy with history at Fenerbahçe and once worn by legendary figures, placing on his shoulders not just expectation but legacy. Even when kept out of the starting 11 at times, he continued to respond decisively, scoring twice in limited minutes early in the new campaign, delivering commanding performances in European competition, including a decisive display against Dynamo Kiev that drew international praise, and securing his first senior call-up to the Turkish national team. Milestones that confirmed his trajectory was not hype-driven, but performance-earned. While contractual complexities with his former academy club were eventually resolved through financial settlement and loan agreements, clearing the final administrative shadows from his rise. As the season progressed, he began receiving consecutive starts, dictating matches with creativity and daring, striking the post with audacious long-range attempts, carving open defenses in derbies such as his first against Besiktas, where he won penalties and repeatedly placed teammates in clear scoring positions, and even in defeat emerging as one of the most influential players on the pitch, calmly telling reporters that he felt no pressure because he played with joy, a statement that perhaps captures the essence of his ascent better than any statistic. For beneath the records, the headlines, and the comparisons lies a young footballer whose greatest quality may be the simplicity with which he embraces the game. By the end of that league season, even though Fenerbahçe had narrowly missed out on the title and Arda Güler had played just over 900 minutes, the numbers told a story too loud to ignore, because in that limited time he created 40 goal-scoring chances, averaging one every 23 minutes, a rate that stood as a league record and placed him among Europe's elite creators, with only a handful of players across the continent posting higher expected assist figures, names that included Lionel Messi, Neymar, and Kevin De Bruyne. Yet, as remarkable as his league output was, his performances in the Turkish Cup elevated the narrative even further, assisting in the round of 16, scoring in the quarterfinals, initiating the move that opened the scoring in the semifinal with a subtle backheel touch, and then delivering what many considered the defining performance of his young career in the final against Istanbul Başakşehir, where within the opening minute he assisted the first goal and proceeded to dominate the match with extraordinary composure, completing 91% of his passes, executing every long ball with precision, barely surrendering possession, and most astonishingly creating 8 clear chances in a single final at just 18 years old. A display that removed all debate about the Man of the Match award and intensified international attention. Shortly afterward, he became the youngest player to score for Turkey in an official match with a strike so audacious that commentators described it as the kind of goal worthy of deciding any contest on its own.